Now, guys, this is going to be a 10 marker question, which you can expect from Parson always. So if you see what are the 10 markers that we have discussed, you can actually expect a question from social action here. That is the first topic. And from there, you can actually expect a 10 marker, or even it can be a longer question from social action. And then you can actually expect a question from pattern variable. Again, here also, 10 marker, or sometimes it can be asked as a longer version as well. But normally, this is a classical 10 marker. And then when it comes to yesterday's session, we have discussed about moving equilibrium or the mechanism equilibrium phase, which is also a classical 10 marker. And then AGIL, they can ask you as a 10 marker. And now this one, cybernetic hierarchy of control, is another 10 marker. So these are the 5 possible 10 markers which they can ask you. And out of this, 1 or 2 you can expect at any point of time. And what are the long question? Long question, they can ask you social action, same thing that we have done. Social system, they can ask you long question. Pattern variable also, they can ask you long question. And also action system, if they want, they can ask you as a long question. Okay, so now let's look into this one, this cybernetic hierarchy of control. So this is another dimension of his theory of social system. So if the question is asked on social system, towards the end of that, you also need to discuss about the cybernetic hierarchy of control. Okay, so if you see social system, we have discussed 2 parts mainly: mechanism equilibrium phase and then requisite functionalism phase. So in mechanism equilibrium phase, I've told you society is in an equilibrium because there are certain mechanisms to maintain certain functions, and because of that, society will be in an equilibrium all the time. Social system will be in an equilibrium. But whenever there is a disturbance, the disturbance is temporary. There will be a feedback which is going to be given, and then certain mechanisms will operate further, and it will bring back society in equilibrium. Okay, so there are mechanisms, specific mechanisms, right? And they fulfill needs, and that brings society in an equilibrium. Okay, so when there is a disturbance, what will happen? That means a temporary state of disequilibrium, a feedback will be given. Okay, and then the mechanisms, there are specific mechanisms which are there in the system, will act upon that and then fulfill the requirement and will bring back equilibrium. So it could be a police system, judicial system, family system, religion, it could be anything, that mechanisms. Okay, so society is always in an equilibrium. So what is this break of equilibrium, or when this break will come, or what does that disequilibrium means? This is the situation of social change according to Parson, which is very temporary. So this disturbance will bring back actually a new system, new equilibrium. This is what the social change concept of Parson. So another question which can be asked or connected from this is actually social change according to Parson. The social change, if you need to write, you need to talk about this one. At the same time, you need to discuss the reason for this break of equilibrium. So what is the reason for break of equilibrium is what I'm going to discuss under cybernetic hierarchy of control. So what Parson says is these action systems which we have discussed. What are the action system? Cultural system, okay, social system, and then personality system, and then organismic system. So these action systems are continuous interaction with each other. So these are not isolated. Actions are not isolated. They are in constellation. In the similar way, these action systems are also in continuous interaction. Even yesterday, when I discussed about AGIL, we have discussed that each of that are in continuous interaction. And then I have discussed that these action systems are nothing but the abstractions of AGIL. So if AGIL are in continuous interaction, this also has to be in continuous interaction. But now how this interaction takes place? This interaction takes place in 2 ways. This is in the form of exchanges. So they are in continuous interaction. How? They keep on exchanging things. But what do they exchange? They exchange 2 things. One is energy and the other one is information. So there will be continuous exchange between these action systems. The 2 exchanges which takes place between the systems are energy exchange and information exchange. So let me show you here. energy, okay, and then information. So these are the two exchanges takes place. So energy flow from organismic system. What does that mean? Organismic system is the basic source of energy, and information comes from cultural system. What does that mean? Cultural system is the source of information. Now when I talk about energy, energy is the motivation or the internal aspect which is required for the system to work. But when I talk about the information, it refers to the basic the ideas or the basis of which the system work. Information, the ideas on the basis of which the system work. So motivation is very important. So that's what he refer in terms of idea. So this is nothing but the motivation. When I talk about information, these are the ideas on the basis of which any system work. So cultural system is the source of information from where information flows there, and organismic system is the source of energy. So when the source of energy is organismic system, and this order you need to follow, okay, so don't change the order. This hierarchy is essential, and this hierarchy has to be managed according to Parson. So information comes from cultural system and energy goes from organismic system. So the source of information is the cultural system, and the source of information, energy or the motivation is the organismic system. And this particular order has to be maintained, and this order has to exist like this. Now, according to Parson, if there is a break in the flow, okay, so this situation is what he explained in terms of cybernetic hierarchy of control. If there is a break in the flow, that means this flow, this flow, this flow, this flow, this is a situation what he mean by disequilibrium. So I hope you understood now. So it is very clear. We are talking cybernetic hierarchy in terms of what? In terms of action systems. Action systems are not isolated, but in continuous interaction, right? Like whenever we discussed about action, we have discussed that actions are not in isolation, but in constellation. And similarly, AGIL, when I've discussed, if you remember, I have drawn this diagram, they are not in isolation, right? They are in continuous interaction. Same way, if AGIL, when we discussed yesterday, and here we have, towards the end, we have discussed that action systems are nothing but the abstractions of AGIL. And I've shown you that demonstration, like the goal attainment is part of personality system, adaptation is part of organismic system, and then integration, and then latency, right? Family system and the cultural system, or the social system and the cultural system. So if this is the case, this order has to be maintained. Why? Because cultural system is the source of information and the organismic system is the source of energy. So two types of exchanges what required for the system to survive: energy and information. And the source of energy and information is given, and it should be in this order. If there is a break in the flow, what will happen? There will be temporary disequilibrium. So if there is a temporary disequilibrium, then what will happen? Then this will work. Then this will activate, right? There will be a breakdown, then the feedback will be given. So the new mechanisms will act, will fulfill that condition and bring back equilibrium. That means that order will be maintained, that energy flow and information flow will be maintained. So this is what social change according to Parson. So if they're asking you a social change according to Parson, what you need to do, you need to talk about cybernetic hierarchy of control. At the same time, moving equilibrium put together is what you need to write social change. Social change according to Parson is a temporary situation, is a temporary disequilibrium. But for Marx, you know, it is a permanent problem and it comes after revolution. But here it's not like that. It's a temporary problem and it's a very common problem. So when that will happen, it will happen when there is a break in the flow. Which flow? Energy flow and information flow. Okay, so that's about this topic of cybernetic hierarchy of control. Let me go with the PDF now. It's a very simple concept. Cybernetic hierarchy of control. Another dimension of his theory is cybernetic hierarchy of control. Action systems are not isolated, but in continuous interaction with each other in the form of exchanges. So action systems, what are the action system? Cultural system, social system, personality system, and organismic system. They are in a continuous interaction between each other in the form of exchange. What two exchanges? There are two types of exchanges, which is what is that? Energy exchange and information exchange. So two types of exchange take place in a particular hierarchy. This hierarchy is important. The order of flow is important, and they are energy and information. Energy refers to the motivation part, okay, or the internal aspect for the system to work, and information refers to the ideas on the basis of which the system works. Parson consider cultural system as a source of information and organismic system as the source of energy. So this is the order in which you need to draw the diagram. Okay, you can show here energy flow from organismic system. One single arrow will like this will be enough, or you can do it like the way I have shown in the diagram, whatever is convenient to you. Or cultural system is a source of information. If there is a break in the flow between this two or this two or this two, anywhere some break is happening, that's when the disequilibrium that we mentioned yesterday will come, and then mechanisms will act upon again and will bring back the equilibrium. The flow takes place in a particular direction, and the balance between the two is crucial for the survival of the system. If the balance between information flow and energy flow is disturbed, the equilibrium disturbed. That's when the temporary state of disequilibrium is coming. So remember, guys, I'm always stress on this word, temporary state of disequilibrium. Why I'm always stressing on this, although I have not mentioned here, is because for Parson, these are temporary. For Durkheim, these problems are temporary, which can be solved within itself. But for Marx, these problems which are there are permanent, and there is only solution, which is revolution. But that's not the case with Parson nor for Durkheim. Within the system, there can be solutions for both of them. Okay, so in case if they are asking any comparison, it is the same. This result in social change, and various mechanisms operate to restore the equilibrium. Thus, Parsons' functional theory of system and cybernetic hierarchy of control is known as his master analytical framework, or grand theory, or the generalized theory. Okay, so this is what we have done. We have discussed about social action, and then we have seen the definition: any act consciously performed is social action. And then we have seen 4 conditions, and then we have discussed about 2 orientation, the motivational orientation, and then the value orientation. And then we discussed about ideal types, the 3 ideal types of social action, that is instrumental action, expressive action, and then moral action. Instrumental action, which is similar to Zweck rational action of Weber. Expressive action similar to affective action of Weber. Moral action is similar to traditional and vote rational action of Weber. In instrumental action, evaluative component is more dominant. Expressive action, that affective, that component is this catholic component is more dominant. When it comes to moral action, it is a value, it is a belief which is more dominant. So social action lead to social interaction. In which situation? If the action is oriented towards other person and is in a state of mutual reciprocity, then there is social interaction. This social interaction will result into a social system provided certain conditions, 3 conditions. What are they? We have seen yesterday the 3 conditions: abstract boundary, norms and values, motivation, and the goal. So if you satisfy these 3 conditions, then social interaction, the interaction between you and me, can become a social system if these 3 conditions are met. Otherwise, interaction between you and me just remain as interaction. But if that conditions have been met, there is a boundary, there is a norms and values which is followed, and there is a goal, then that becomes a social system. So that is a definition, or the longer definition, consisting of plurality of individual actors interacting with each other in a situation which is having at least a physical or environmental aspect, actors who are motivated in terms of tendency to optimization of gratification and all those things, right? That bigger definition, if you want, you can write that as well. And then we have discussed the conditions and then the functional theory in 2 phases: mechanism equilibrium phase, which is the moving equilibrium, and then the requisite functionalism phase, which is the AGIL model. And then we have discussed about AGIL. We have seen that in a matrix: adaptation, goal attainment, integration, latency, and that matrix is interconnected. And we have seen the AGIL of society, and we have extended that AGIL to the abstract level as the action system, organismic system, personality system, and social system, as well as the cultural system. So from here, if you see social actions never occur in isolation, but in constellation. And that's what we have discussed as action system. And 4 different types of action system we discussed. right? And later we have understood these as the abstractions of AGIL model. And then now today, towards the end, we also discussed about cybernetic hierarchy of control. So this is what we have done with Parson, and we are done with Parson. I don't think that you'll be facing any problem with respect to Parson. Now there is a critical analysis part, which is very simple 15-minute discussion, which is available in the application, which you have to do it yourself. And tomorrow we will be starting with Merton. Once I think we will take only 2 days to do with Merton, and then there is Mead. Mead, I will not be discussing in the live session, that you will be doing it yourself, which is there in the application anyway, just one session. And then another 2 days, we will be dealing with the Indian thinkers, Gure, and then Srinivas, and then this A.R. Desai. So another 4 days, I think we'll be able to finish thinkers, and then we will move forward to the other topics. Okay, so any questions here, guys, from this discussion today? Because I'm not feeling comfortable today to extend the session. So that's the reason why I just took this very small session of cybernetic hierarchy of control. It is nothing but, I repeat, cybernetic hierarchy of control is all about the interaction between action system. He's only talking about action system here. Interaction is in the form of exchange. To exchange energy and information. Now you need to know what is energy. Energy is the motivation part. Information is the ideas that name itself will tell you. Now cultural system is the source of information, and organismic system is the source of energy, right? So if there is a break in the flow, then there is disturbance, then the moving equilibrium will come into picture. So if the question is asked on cybernetic hierarchy of control, still you need to talk about the moving equilibrium. All right, so that's it, guys. I hope it's clear. We'll stop the session here. Any question here from this topic? Okay, so we'll stop here, guys. See you tomorrow with Parson. Yeah.